my bookish friends, welcome back to my booktube channel. My name is Alex and today we are talking about the 12 books that I read in the month of June. I know we are a little bit late with this wrap up. I didn't upload for a week or two there. It's just been a little bit hectic, but I am sitting down today to talk to you about the 12 books that I read in June. Bit of a weird reading month. I really got hooked on romance audiobooks, so a lot of the books that I have to talk to you about today are going to be romance books, and hopefully that's fun for you. I do have some YA fantasy and even one nonfiction, which is a little bit different for me, but yeah, it was just a really big romance book. I don't know, the summer vibes just had me in the mood, and I was plowing through audiobooks for a while there, so pretty much everything I read this month was an audiobook. I'm not sure if I even finished one single physical book. But anyways, we are gonna talk about these and we're gonna do it a little bit different this month. Instead of going by genre or going in order of the books that I read, instead we're gonna go in order of my ratings of the books from lowest rated reads to highest rated reads. So let me know in the comments how we feel about this structure, if it's something you enjoy. I don't know, we're changing it up. So that is what we're gonna do, and let's just dive into them. Starting off with my lowest rated read of the month at 2.75 stars, we have Stolen Throne by Abigail Owen. Wow, she is very reflective and shiny. But you guys, I was so excited for this. This is the sequel to The Liar's Crown, which is a book that I talked about in my underrated YA fantasy books video. I really loved the first one and just thought it was a super fun, like enemies to lovers, twin princesses story. We've got a male love interest with shadow powers. We've got a really interesting fantasy setting, and I really loved the first book. I think I gave it 4 stars-ish. But this sequel just did not capture me the same way, so I was very bummed to give this book a 2.75 stars, but I am still gonna read the third book. I'm still very hopeful that I'm gonna love the end of this series. This one just kind of dragged for me. It was too long, not a lot happened, just wasn't feeling it quite as much as the first book, so a little bit disappointed with that one, but that's The Stolen Throne. And you guys, even though I didn't love the second one, I still do recommend picking up the series because I have really high hopes that it's going to end up being a really good trilogy with the third book coming out next year, I believe. Next up at 3 stars, we have The Summer Job by Lizzie Dent. This was one of my romance picks. I saw it recommended by a friend on Bookstagram, and I did really enjoy this story. We are following our main character, Birdie, who is kind of down on her luck, and her best friend is a sommelier who had this summer job lined up at a hotel in Ireland, I believe, and maybe it was Scotland. At a hotel, and she decided to last minute leave and go on vacation with her boyfriend and left the position just kind of hanging. So our main character decides to pretend to be her best friend, go pretend to be a sommelier for the summer. She thinks this is gonna be a great setup. It's like a small dingy hotel, no big deal. She's wrong. There is actually this huge chef who has taken over the restaurant. They're doing all these renovations and they need a legit sommelier, and our main character has to kind of fake her way through. Of course, she ends up kind of having a romance with one of the guys who works there, one of the chefs, and it was really fun. Just for me, this one was a little bit heavier of a romance. The plot was not totally my vibe. I'm not a big wine, food person, so those descriptions kind of just went over my head. So if those things do really appeal to you, maybe you would really enjoy this one. But yeah, for me, this was a 3 star. I had fun reading it. I blew through it, but nothing amazing. Definitely my least favorite of the many romances that I read this month. Next up is another book that I am hugely disappointed to be giving a low rating, a low for me. I really did think though that this book was going to be a 4 or 5 star, so to give it a 3, I was bummed. It is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal. This is the first in a YA fantasy duology. that I just really expected to be my cup of tea, and this just kind of drug on for me. I didn't really feel any super strong connection to any of our characters, and yeah, just overall was more disappointed than I expected to be. I do still think that I will read book 2, We Free the Stars, but I really thought that when I finished this, I would be super ready to just dive right into the second book, need to know what was gonna happen next, and I can like barely remember what happened in this book. It just really did not stick in my brain. This was my first read of June, so it's been a minute now since I read it, but yeah, I just barely have any recollection, unfortunately. It is a bit of like an enemies to lovers, secret magical powers type of thing. Maybe I wasn't in the right mood. I will pick up the second book and hopefully I'll really enjoy it, but yeah, a little bit disappointed that I didn't love this one as much as I thought I was going to. Next up in the romance category, coming in at 3.25 stars. You guys, I don't know why I get so specific with my ratings. I'm sorry. 3.25 stars for Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is the second book in a companion series to When in Rome, I believe. You guys, I will confess to you that I do not care to read romance series in order. I know that sometimes you'll get spoiled for what happens in the first one, but I will just pick up the second one or the third one if that one sounds more interesting to me, and that's what I did here. I did not read When in Rome, but I decided to pick up Practice Makes Perfect because it just sounded more my speed. I was really interested in the character dynamics. In this one, we are following a young flower shop owner who just decides that she's not very good at dating and decides to ask a kind of bad boy to teach her how to be more interesting on dates. Of course, they're gonna fall in love, and it's just a sweet romance story, but it was just kind of lacking the depth that I was expecting, and I just didn't end up really caring for our characters as much as I wanted to. So while this was a fun read, it definitely was not one of my favorite romances of the month, unfortunately. Next is another YA fantasy sequel, actually also a sequel to a book from my underrated YA fantasy reads, and that is Legends and Liars by Morgan Rhodes, the sequel to Echoes and Empires, which was just such a fun, like guilty pleasure, kind of trashy Gossip Girl-esque YA fantasy story. I just ate it up. And the second one was good. Again, not quite as good as the first, although this is a duology. So this was the end of the series, and I do recommend reading this YA fantasy duology if you are looking for that just kind of like fun, silly fantasy vibe. Don't take it too seriously, but if you're into like American Royals, Gossip Girl, but you want that fantasy twist on it, this series is definitely the one. We are following our main character who's kind of a young socialite, but then her father is assassinated and she kind of loses her position in society because of that. And at this kind of gala ball on the anniversary of her father's death, she accidentally becomes infected with forbidden magic and ends up teaming up with a thief to try and help her get this magic out of her before anyone finds out. Obviously, the second book is about something different, but I'm not gonna spoil the first one for you. So that's kind of the premise of the first book. And I just found the tone and our main character so funny and snarky and just wonderful, like perfect, just trash TV type of voice. I loved that so much in the first book. I did feel like due to our character growth, we lost a little bit of that voice that I loved in the second book. So that's probably why I gave it a little bit lower of a rating. It's just that voice and like banter that I was eating up in the first book was a little bit less in the second book because we had some changes in our characters for the better. But you know, for me as a reader, I still wanted that like same level of snark, and it just wasn't quite there. Even though it was lacking a little bit of that personality that I loved, I still gave it 3.25 stars, still had a fun time reading it, and still recommend this duology if you're looking for that kind of vibe. It's definitely a fun read, a fast read, super easy, and I recommend it. Next up at 3.5 stars, we have The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther, which is actually a young adult romance. This is the only YA romance that I read this month because I typically don't enjoy that genre as much as adult romance, even though I'm not a big spice girl. I just don't love YA romances because they tend to be a little bit more superficial in my mind. I have a harder time believing, you know, the love story, which is hilarious because I met my husband at 20 and got married at 21. So I know that's a little bit hypocritical of me that I don't actually love like younger romance stories, but it is what it is. They're just not my favorite. I find them a little bit less believable, and that's that. But in this one, we are following our main character who has just graduated high school, so I prefer that older age group. I do find that more enjoyable just as an adult to read. So she's just graduated high school and she's going on this family vacation that she has not gone on since she lost her older sister tragically in a car accident. So she's returning to this place that her sister loves and kind of having all of these memories. There is a family wedding going on, and they are also playing this huge family game that they play every year called Assassin. And this is something that her sister really, really loved. So it's very nostalgic for her. It's very kind of emotionally charged. And of course, one of the groomsmen in the wedding becomes her love interest in the story. And they kind of team up secretly as allies in this game. I found the game really fun. The romance was all right. It was cute. I was very concerned towards the end that we were going in a direction I was not going to like, and I was really, really pleasantly surprised with how the story ended. I found the ending to be actually very believable and enjoyable, so overall, I did end up liking it. The ending redeemed it, and it got a 3.5 stars from me. The game element was fun and different, but again, nothing amazing, nothing that blew me away in this one. Next up at 3.75 stars, we have The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. I think this was the first romance that I read in June that kind of started this romance kick for me. This is another companion novel to The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren, and it is set in this world where there has been this technology created that will help you find your soulmate. It's basically a dating app, but they like test your DNA to tell you your compatibility levels. And we are following the best friend from the first book. Her name is Fizzy, and she is a romance author who is not actually very good at romance in real life. And we are also following this charming single dad who is an environmentalist documentary maker. And unfortunately, his network has decided to go a different route, and they had put him in charge of creating a new dating show. He decides to cast Fizzy as the main character, and he is going to find her soulmate using this technology and kind of this interesting dating show setup. Of course, the two are actually going to fall in love in the process, and it was just this really sweet, like, single dad trope. His daughter was charming and adorable. We still got to see our main characters for the soulmate equation a little bit, which was sweet. And Fizzy was just a really fun main character, but overall, definitely my favorite aspect was this kind of like spin on The Bachelor. It was very silly. I wished we'd had a little bit more of it because it was a lot of fun to see play out, and I absolutely loved the ending and kind of how everything wrapped up with her ending up with the producer instead of one of the men. You guys, I don't feel like that's a spoiler in a romance. I feel like you already know at the beginning who they're gonna end up with. It's dual POV, you guys. Of course they're gonna end up together. So I really liked how that all worked out and ended up really enjoying this. And this one is what started me on this desperate search for more fun, light summer romances to read in the month of June. And it's kind of seeped over into July a little bit. So you can hear me talk about more romances coming in the future as well. But I do definitely recommend The True Love Experiment. Also getting a 3.75 stars is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This is definitely a more emotional, a more heavy romance, and I believe this was like the it girl of the summer last year. Everyone was reading this book. It is a story about a young girl whose family buys a lake house, and of course next door there are two young boys. She becomes best friends with one of them and eventually falls in love with him. But we are also following her 12 years in the future where they have broken up a long time ago, and we don't quite know what all went down between the two of them, but his mother has died and she is going to the funeral. This will be the first time that she sees him in 12 years. And so we kind of go back and forth between the two timelines. I really preferred the timeline when they were younger, which is funny because I said I don't like YA romance, but I just wanted to know what the heck happened, what went wrong all those years ago, and I was very conflicted by the end of this story. I thought about it forever. I just like could not decide how I felt about the ending. So if you've read this book and also have conflicted feelings, DM me on Instagram. We can talk about it because I have lots of feelings still, but because I like couldn't stop reading it, I had to give it a pretty good rating. But at the same time, I'm like frustrated with it. It is an interesting one, but I do recommend it if you are in the mood for a more emotional type of romance and you like that like dual timeline kind of back and forth writing style. This was definitely an interesting one. And I do want to read Meet Me at the Lake, Carly Fortune's newer release. I am interested to see what that one is all about. Next up at 4 stars, we have Garden of the Cursed by Katie Rose Poole. This is a newer release YA fantasy about a young curse breaker who is looking for her missing mother and ends up kind of teaming up with her old friend who they had a falling out, and she's going to use him to kind of get back into higher society and look around, snoop around for clues about her mother's whereabouts. But he also needs her help breaking a curse that has befallen him. So the two decide to fake date in order to kind of have society accept her back in so she can come to all these events with him, get around the people she needs to get around, both to figure out his curse and also to find clues about where her mother went. So I gave this one a 4 stars. I thought it was very interesting. I liked the magic system. Our magic and curses have to do with these curse cards, and when you destroy the card, you break the curse. So that's kind of what she has been doing to make her living, which I think is very interesting. And I'm very intrigued by the ending. I'm really excited to read the next one. I don't know if this is a duology or a trilogy, what's going to happen here, but I will definitely be picking up the next book when it comes out. And this one was a very fun, fast-paced, easy YA fantasy read that I definitely recommend if you like those kind of dark academia-ish vibes. I definitely recommend. All right, you guys, the next one coming in at 4.25 stars. I think the highest rated romance that I have on this list is The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. And you guys, I probably could have rounded this up even higher. I probably could have given it 5 stars. I had so freaking much fun reading this book. We are following a female bodyguard who is assigned to watch over and protect a famous actor who has come back to Texas because his mother is diagnosed with cancer, and he is reuniting with his family for the first time. And he makes the call that if he is going to be forced to have a bodyguard, that his family can't know about it. So of course they're going to have to fake date, and she is going to have to pretend to be his girlfriend so that his family does not know that she's actually his bodyguard protecting him from a corgi breeding stalker. And you guys, this book is just so fun. There are some heavier topics. He has lost his brother and is dealing with kind of post-traumatic stress from that incident because he was involved the night that his brother passed away. So there are some heavier topics in that sense, but oh my gosh, the rest of this book is so light and fluffy. Like their interactions, their experiences, it's so fun. I love the family. I love her like staying with his parents and getting to know them. It's so charming. It is closed door, very clean, which is my style, my speed. I really, really enjoy that. So you guys, this one was just so much fun for me. I absolutely loved it. And if you've been considering picking it up, this is your sign to do so. It is a very cute romance book. Now we are on to my last 2 books of June, or my last 2 in this video, both rated 5 stars. First is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. This is a nonfiction Christian book by an author who is also a pastor in my area. I actually used to go to the church that he preaches at in Portland, and I've just been a fan of his writing and his teaching for quite a while. He has a bunch of books and they're all so excellent. But this one is about just kind of the slow lifestyle that Jesus lived during his time here and how we can slow down our lives to kind of center around things that really matter to us and change our lifestyle to be more aligned with Jesus. And I just really, really enjoyed it. There were so many good things that I really took to heart and just helped me kind of have better perspective about the culture that we live in and the speed and the busyness and just all the things that kind of get in the way of the things that matter most in life. So I definitely highly recommend this read. It is so profound, so wonderful. And just as a follower of Jesus, it really opened my eyes to ways that I can be more intentional about following Jesus, specifically in that way of just slowing down and being more present in my life. So I really, really enjoyed this one, blew through it, had my husband read it, we'll probably read it again. I loved it. And last but not least, we have The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. You guys, I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. It felt so nostalgic. It is kind of a magical realism about this woman who is a huge fan of this author who wrote a lot of children's books and then stopped publishing for a while. And it comes out that he is going to publish one last book, or he has written one last book, but there's only one copy in existence. And he is going to invite certain people to his island called Clock Island, which is kind of the inspiration for his stories. They're called the Clock Island books. He's going to invite a certain group of people to come and compete to win this one copy, and then they can do with that what they would like. So our main character gets invited to compete, and she wants to win to sell the book in order to be able to adopt this young boy who she has come to love and who has lost his parents, and she wants to adopt him so badly but can't afford to. So that is her plan. She is going to win this competition to be able to become a family with this boy. It is so precious. And then we are also following a man who lives on the island with the author. He's actually the illustrator of the children's books, and he's been around for the trauma that the author has been involved in, and we get kind of his perspective. There's a bit of a romance. It's so precious. Oh my gosh, you guys, this book just touched my heart in ways I did not expect. It kind of felt like Magic Treehouse vibes, but Clock Island is the series, and I just really, really adored everything about this story. It was so touching, but also light. I don't know. It was just the perfect amount of all the different emotions and just so nostalgic and sweet. I loved it so much. So gave 5 stars, blew through it, and yeah, was really surprised. I did not think I was gonna love it quite as much as I did, and I highly, highly recommend The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. It is just a delight to read. It was so sweet. So you guys, that is all. Those are the 12 books that I read in the month of June. I have already some great books that I've read in July that I cannot wait to talk to you about next month, but that is all that I have for you guys today. So let me know in the comments what your best read of June was. I would love to chat about that with you, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, friends.